There is a fundamental error in the way you have been attempting to change your life, and it has nothing to do with your willpower, your dedication, or the sincerity of your desire. The error is architectural. You are attempting to reprogram your deepest subconscious beliefs in the middle of the day, while your logical, analytical mind is fully awake, fully armed, and standing guard at the gates of your inner world. This is the precise equivalent of attempting to rob a heavily fortified vault through the front door, in broad daylight, while the security system is fully operational and the guards are alert. Every affirmation you repeat that contradicts your current physical reality is instantly flagged, intercepted, and rejected by the conscious mind, the guard, whose sole function is to protect the existing architecture of your beliefs. But Neville Goddard, one of the most precise metaphysical engineers who ever lived, discovered something that changes everything. He discovered a biological backdoor. He called it the state akin to sleep. Modern neuroscience calls it the Theta brainwave state. For just a few extraordinary minutes every single night, the guard falls asleep at his post, and the vault of creation remains wide open, undefended, and ready to receive any command you choose to place inside it. This is the Theta gateway, and if you can learn to slip your command through this window with precision and intention, the universal law of mind has no alternative but to execute it. It is not magic. It is not mystery. It is the most precise science available to the human being, and tonight you will learn how to use it. Consider for a moment the specific quality of your frustration. You have repeated affirmations, perhaps hundreds of times in a single day. You have written your desires in journals. You have constructed vision boards and placed them where you would see them every morning. And yet, when you look at your physical reality, your bank account, your relationships, your body, your circumstances, the landscape remains almost entirely unchanged. The pain of this experience is not the pain of failure. It is something more precise and more cruel than that. It is the pain of effort without result, of sincere application without corresponding change. And what makes it so devastating is that you cannot understand why it is not working, because you are doing everything you were told to do. But here is the diagnosis, delivered with clinical precision. You have been exhausting yourself fighting the guard in broad daylight. You have been directing enormous amounts of mental and emotional energy at a defense system specifically designed to resist exactly what you are sending it. The conscious mind, when fully awake, does not permit contradictory information to pass through to the subconscious without a fight. Every time you said, "I am wealthy," while staring at an overdrawn account, the guard looked at the evidence, compared it to your statement, and filed your affirmation under rejected, insufficient evidence. The reverse bridge to your frustration is this: you were never broken. The law was never failing you. You were simply using the wrong entrance. Neville Goddard's promise, not his suggestion, but his promise, backed by his own tested experience and by the lives of his students, is that the Theta gateway is a passageway that bypasses the guard entirely. When you operate from within this twilight state, the analytical mind is no longer at its post. There is no resistance. There is no counter-argument. There is no defensive mechanism standing between your chosen desire and the deep, fertile, creative soil of the subconscious mind. The seed passes through without friction, without effort, without fight. The very quality of exhaustion that has defined your previous attempts becomes completely irrelevant, because stealth requires no force. What was once a battle becomes a whisper into a sleeping giant's ear. And when that seed is planted in this precise twilight condition, when it is placed correctly, with feeling and with sensory completeness, in the exact window that Neville identified, the machinery of the cosmos, which is nothing less than the universal subconscious mind, responding to the pattern you have imprinted upon it, begins to move. It moves while you sleep. It reorganizes circumstances, aligns coincidences, draws people and resources into your orbit, all without your conscious interference, and all in direct accordance with the blueprint you installed at the gateway. Neville was not offering a comfort. He was describing a law, and like gravity, this law does not require your belief to operate. It only requires your correct use of it. This video is not a motivational lecture. It is an operational briefing. What you are about to receive is the complete infiltration protocol, a step-by-step, precise methodology for accessing the Theta gateway and uploading the specific command of your desire directly into the mainframe of the universal subconscious mind. Every component of this protocol has a logical basis, a neurological foundation, and a metaphysical law behind it. Nothing in what follows is arbitrary. Every instruction exists because the architecture of the mind demands it. You will understand not just what to do, but precisely why each step is non-negotiable. Because when you understand the law, you apply it with a confidence that itself becomes part of the fuel that drives the result. Before we proceed, I am going to ask something of you, not as a formality, but as the first act of your initiation into this practice. Type the words, "I enter the gateway," in the comments below. This is not a meaningless gesture. It is the beginning of your conscious declaration of intent. The act of writing those words is your first command, issued in the waking state, that tonight you will find the door. The community of those who have made this declaration before you is already assembling below. Join them. And as you do, understand that this small act is itself an exercise in the principle we are about to study. The principle of acting from the end, as if the thing is already decided. There is, however, one critical warning that must be issued before we go further, and it is the very thing that separates those who use this gateway to transform their reality from those who find the door, touch the handle, and walk away empty-handed. There is a phenomenon I will detail precisely in part 4 of this video. It is called the unconscious drift. The majority of people who attempt Neville's method reach the threshold of the Theta state. They find the open door, they begin to feel the magnificent drowsiness of the gateway, and then, in the final moments before sleep, their untrained mind wanders. It drifts to the argument from earlier that day, to the unpaid bill on the counter, to the anxiety that has been their constant companion. And in doing so, they fall asleep inside the wrong blueprint. They have used the most powerful creative window of their entire day to order more of what they do not want. I will teach you in part 4 the precise discipline required to hold your focus on the edge of the abyss, to maintain the loop of your desired scene in that exact window where consciousness dissolves, without losing the reins. Do not skip that section. It is the difference between the method working and the method failing. Stay with me. To understand the Theta gateway at its deepest level, you must first understand the fundamental architecture of creation as Neville Goddard defined it. He described creation not as an arbitrary act of divine will, but as a precise and lawful act of union, what he called, in the language of his mystical tradition, the mental wedding. This is not a poetic metaphor. It is a structural description of how new realities are conceived and born into physical form. The universe, according to this model, operates through two distinct principles of mind, and their interaction is the engine of all manifestation. The conscious mind, the aspect of your awareness that reads, reasons, analyzes, and judges, is the masculine principle. It is the architect. It holds the blueprint. It selects the desire, defines its parameters, and initiates the creative act. But the conscious mind by itself cannot build anything. It has no substance with which to work. It can only design. The subconscious mind is the feminine principle, the universal creative medium, the divine substance, the infinite field of first cause that receives the imprint of the conscious mind's blueprint and gives it physical form. This is not a passive process. The subconscious mind is not merely a storage unit. It is an active, intelligent, creative force of extraordinary power, operating beneath the threshold of your awareness, organizing the entire physical apparatus of your life, your health, your circumstances, your relationships, your financial conditions. According to the dominant patterns, beliefs, and feelings, it has received and accepted as its operating instructions. It does not evaluate. It does not judge. It does not ask whether the blueprint it receives is desirable or undesirable. It simply builds. It is the most faithful contractor in existence, and it will construct with absolute precision exactly what the blueprint it holds commands. Here, then, is the origin of the problem, stated with complete logical clarity. During your waking hours, during the hours when your conscious mind is fully alert, fully analytical, and fully engaged with the evidence of the physical world around it, The masculine principle is not in a state that allows for successful union with the feminine. It is, in fact, operating in direct opposition to union. The conscious mind, in its fully alert beta state, is in a condition of separation and defense. It is constantly comparing the desired blueprint against the existing conditions of physical reality. It is continuously performing the analysis of what is versus what I want. And because it is bound to the evidence of the senses, it is perpetually reinforcing the existing blueprint rather than installing a new one. Every time you attempt to implant a new belief through willpower or forced repetition during the waking state, you are asking two adversarial forces to unite. The masculine principle is fighting the feminine's existing programming rather than merging with it in creative partnership. The mental wedding, therefore, requires a very specific condition to occur. It requires the temporary suspension of the conscious mind's analytical and defensive functions. It requires the masculine principle to release its grip on the evidence of the physical world and to relax into a state of pure receptive openness. It requires, in the most precise metaphysical terms, a surrender. Not the surrender of the desire, never that, but the surrender of the judgment that stands between the desire and its conception. And this is precisely why the twilight state, the Theta gateway, is not merely useful for this process. It is the only condition under which the mental wedding can be fully and successfully consummated. It is the only moment in your daily cycle when the conscious mind willingly, biologically, inevitably releases its guardianship and allows the deep mind to be approached without resistance. When you enter the Theta state, that exquisitely delicate threshold between wakefulness and sleep, that floating, drowsy, beautifully formless sensation that you pass through every single night, the analytical functions of the conscious mind begin to dissolve. The critical faculty softens, the evidentiary comparisons cease, the defense systems stand down, and in this precise moment, the door between the conscious and subconscious minds swings open. The masculine principle, no longer armored and resistant, can approach the feminine principle in the fullness of creative intention. The distance between what I want and what is collapses, because the mechanism that was measuring that distance has gone offline. There is no longer a guard at the door telling your seed that it has no right to enter. The pathway is clear. It is essential to understand the quality of this openness, because it illuminates why the specific technique Neville prescribed is engineered the way it is. In the Theta state, the subconscious mind does not receive propositions. It does not receive arguments, declarations, or logical statements. It receives feeling. It receives the lived, sensory, emotionally inhabited experience of an event. When you say to yourself in full wakefulness, "I am successful," the subconscious receives a linguistic signal that it immediately cross-references against the vast archive of feeling it already holds. If the feeling archive contains "I am a failure" as the dominant imprint, the linguistic signal is overridden. But when you enter the Theta state and you feel, with the sensory, immersive, present-tense reality of a lived experience, what it is like to have received the congratulations, to hold the object, to inhabit the fulfilled desire, you are not giving the subconscious a statement. You are giving it a mold. You are pouring liquid metal directly into the cast of the new reality, and the deep mind accepts it without question, without comparison, without resistance. This is the precise meaning of Neville's instruction to feel it real. It is not an encouragement to be enthusiastic. It is a technical directive. The feeling is the language of the subconscious. The Theta state is the condition of maximum receptivity to that language. Together, they constitute the complete architecture of the mental wedding. The desire, clothed in vivid sensory first-person feeling, delivered to the deep mind through the open door of the Theta gateway, constitutes the moment of conception. And what is conceived in this union is not a wish or a hope. It is a pattern, a precise metaphysical blueprint that the universal creative substance is now obligated, by law, to externalize in physical form. The law is not selective. It does not favor some people over others. It does not require years of spiritual discipline before it begins to respond. It responds to the correct use of the correct technique, applied in the correct state, every single time, without exception. The word obligated here is not rhetorical. It is the most important word in this entire explanation. When Neville Goddard spoke of the law, he was not speaking of a divine being who might choose to grant your request if it were pleasing enough. He was speaking of a mechanical, impersonal, perfectly consistent principle of mind, as reliable as the law of thermodynamics, as unbreakable as the law of gravity. When the blueprint is correctly installed in the subconscious, the law of cause and effect is set in motion. The subconscious mind, now holding the new imprint as its operative reality, begins to reorganize your entire inner world, your assumptions, your habitual feelings, your default expectations, to conform to the new pattern. And as the inner world is reorganized, the outer world, which is nothing more than the projected reflection of the inner world, follows. It must. It is law. There is no mechanism by which the outer can fail to reflect the inner, once the inner has been correctly and completely reprogrammed. This is why the Theta gateway is not a technique among many techniques, to be chosen based on personal preference. It is the singular, most efficient access point to the mechanism of creation available to the human being in their normal daily cycle. Every other method, forced affirmation, willpower, visualization in the fully alert state, is an attempt to plant a seed in soil that is hardened and resistant. The Theta gateway is the moment every night when the soil becomes soft, when it becomes receptive, when it will receive any seed you plant in it and cultivate it with the same unconditional faithfulness, regardless of the content. The law does not care whether the seed you plant is a seed of abundance or a seed of poverty. It does not distinguish between a seed of love and a seed of loneliness. It will grow what you plant. Therefore, the intelligence of this system is not in the law itself. The law is blind. The intelligence lies in you, the thinker, who must understand the law thoroughly enough to plant deliberately, consciously, and precisely, rather than accidentally. Consider the analogy of a master architect working with a perfectly obedient construction crew. The conscious mind is the architect. The subconscious mind is the crew. The blueprint is the feeling image you hold in the Theta state. During the day, while the architect is fully awake and active, the crew is occupied with maintaining the existing structure, the building of your current reality. According to the blueprints that have been accumulating since childhood, the existing blueprints are deeply embedded, many of them installed before the age of 7, when the critical faculty had not yet fully developed and the child's mind was itself in a near-constant Theta state, absorbing every environmental imprint without filter. Those early blueprints, about worthiness, about money, about love, about safety, are the ones currently running the construction crew. To change the building, you must change the blueprints. And the only moment in your adult daily cycle when the architect can slip new blueprints to the crew without the interference of the entire existing building bureaucracy is in the Theta gateway, when the bureaucratic machinery goes quiet. The genius of Neville's discovery, seen from this architectural perspective, is its precision. He did not merely teach people to think positively. He identified the exact biological window in which new blueprints could be installed with minimum resistance and maximum permanence. He understood that the subconscious mind, once it has accepted a new imprint, does not hold it tentatively or provisionally. It holds it with the same absolute commitment with which it has always operated, the same commitment that has maintained your existing reality so faithfully, sometimes despite your desperate conscious desire for change. That same faithfulness, redirected by a new blueprint, becomes the engine of your liberation. The force that was working against you was never the law. It was never the subconscious. It was only the content of the blueprint you had previously installed. And now, tonight, you are going to install a new one. There is a dimension of this mental wedding that must be addressed with complete clarity, because it is where many practitioners make a critical error. They attempt to use the Theta gateway to insert logical statements or visualize narratives into the subconscious, and they find the results inconsistent. The reason is that the subconscious does not process the content of a narrative. It processes the feeling state that the narrative generates. The scene you hold at the gateway, the brief, sensory, immersive moment of fulfilled desire, is not valuable because it is a detailed picture. It is valuable because it generates a specific feeling state and that feeling state is the actual signal that the subconscious receives and records as its new operating reality. The picture is merely the vehicle for the feeling. The feeling is the seed. This distinction is not semantic, it is structural, and failing to grasp it is one of the primary reasons practitioners report inconsistent results. Therefore, when you construct your scene for the Theta gateway, your primary task is not the construction of a vivid picture. Your primary task is the cultivation of a specific feeling. The feeling of relief, the feeling of gratitude, the feeling of the naturalness and normalcy of the desired condition, not the explosive ecstasy of surprise, but the calm, settled, taken-for-granted quality of something that has simply become true. The wish fulfilled is not a novel event you are watching in astonishment. It is your new reality, familiar and settled, being lived from the inside. This is the quality of feeling that signals to the subconscious that the new blueprint is not a wish but a fact, not a future possibility but a present condition. And it is this signal, delivered through the open door of the Theta state, that constitutes the complete and successful act of the mental wedding. The fullness of this understanding brings us to the most empowering recognition available to the student of this science. Every night of your life, without exception, you are already using the Theta gateway. You are already falling asleep. You are already passing through the precise neurological state that Neville identified as the access point to the creative medium. The only question, the only variable in this entire equation, is what you are carrying through the door when you pass through it. Most people carry the residue of their day, the anxieties, the grievances, the unsolved problems, the default worry patterns that the untrained mind defaults to when left to its own momentum. They carry, in other words, the seeds of the reality they are desperately trying to escape. And the law, impartial and precise, receives those seeds and grows them with perfect faithfulness. The gateway has been open every night of your life. Tonight, for the first time, you are going to choose what you bring through it. The philosophy of Neville Goddard is not a system of belief to be accepted on faith. It is a system of law to be understood through logic. And one of the most powerful logical frameworks for understanding why the Theta gateway works with the specific mechanics it does is the ancient story of the Trojan horse. A military strategy so precise in its application of stealth and patience that it succeeded where decades of direct assault had failed. Consider the structure of that story as a metaphor for your relationship with your own subconscious mind, and observe how perfectly the correspondence holds. The city of Troy, the subconscious mind, is vast, powerful, ancient, and extraordinarily well defended. It holds within its walls the treasures of creation, the living substance from which all physical reality is built, the mechanism by which every condition of your life is generated. The Greek army, your conscious desire, has been laying siege to this city for years. The desire for change is real, the effort is genuine, the siege is persistent, and yet the walls hold, the gates remain closed, because no army, however strong, however determined, can breach defenses that were built by the entire accumulated history of a civilization. The gates of Troy represent the critical faculty of the conscious mind, not your critical faculty, but the critical faculty embedded in the existing architecture of your subconscious itself. The existing beliefs about what is possible for you, about who you are, about what the world is, act as gatekeepers with as much power as any fortified wall. They have been reinforced by years, often decades, of repeated experience, of environmental conditioning, of the testimony of the senses, of the well-meaning limitations installed by parents and society. These gates are not malicious. They are protective. They exist because the subconscious mind, whose function is the maintenance of stable conditions, has learned through long experience what the current reality looks, feels, and operates like. It maintains that reality because it has been given nothing sufficiently powerful, sufficiently clear, and sufficiently penetrating to replace it. Every direct assault, every forced affirmation, every act of willpower against the existing conditions is simply another day of the Greek army throwing itself against the walls of Troy. Noble, exhausting, and ultimately, in the light of day, futile. The Trojan horse was not a stronger weapon. It was not a larger army or a more sophisticated siege engine. It was a completely different strategy, operating on a completely different principle, the principle of stealth, of indirection, of allowing the defended city to bring the conquering force inside its own walls, by its own initiative, without ever recognizing what it was doing. This is the precise operational principle of the Theta gateway. You do not force your desire into your subconscious at the height of resistance. You do not attempt the breach when the defenses are at maximum readiness. You wait. You are patient. You allow the biological cycle of consciousness to do what it does every single night. You allow the guards, the critical faculty, the analytical resistance to stand down. And in that precise window, you offer the subconscious not a threatening army, but a gift, a beautiful, crafted sensory experience of the wish already fulfilled. Something so harmonious, so natural, so aligned with the drowsy receptivity of the pre-sleep state that the deep mind does not recognize it as an invading force. It embraces it. It pulls it inside the walls. It assimilates it as part of its own operating reality. This is the true meaning of Neville's instruction to never strain in the Theta state, to never force, to never push, to never demand. The Trojan horse did not batter the gates. It was quiet. It was patient. It was presented as something the Trojans themselves desired. A beautiful offering, a gift, a thing of beauty that they could not resist drawing inside. Your desire, clothed in the warm, gentle, sensory feeling of fulfilled reality, presented in the soft, drowsy, non-resistant atmosphere of the Theta state, must have this exact quality. It must not arrive as a declaration of war against the existing conditions. It must arrive as a natural, beautiful, already completed reality that the subconscious draws to itself, because it resonates with the depth and certainty of the feeling you are projecting. The deepest principle of this law is that the subconscious is not conquered by the conscious. It is seduced. The wooden horse was hollow, and inside it were the soldiers who would do the actual work of conquest once they were inside the city. In this metaphor, the hollow horse is the state of relaxation itself, the calm, formless, physically surrendered state of the body at the Theta gateway. And the soldiers hidden inside are not warriors, but seeds. They are the precise sensory feeling images of the desired reality, quietly and patiently waiting to be released into the creative medium of the subconscious. Once the state of relaxation has been accepted, once the subconscious has drawn the sense of peace and drowsiness inside its walls, the seeds emerge from their concealment. They are released into the deep mind at the moment of maximum receptivity, the moment of minimum resistance, the moment when the subconscious has fully opened itself to receive what it believed to be nothing more than rest. And in that moment of maximum receptivity, the seeds are not merely stored. They are activated. Neville was precise about the mechanics of this activation. Once the desire feeling has been implanted at the Theta level, the subconscious does not hold it as a possibility or a preference. It holds it as an accomplished fact, as part of its definition of reality. This is the conquest. This is what the soldiers do once they are inside the city. They do not merely exist there. They reorganize the city from within. The subconscious mind, now operating from the new imprint, begins to adjust every system under its governance, every physiological function, every habitual emotional response, every unconscious behavioral pattern to align with the new blueprint. The body begins to carry itself differently. The eyes begin to notice different opportunities. The voice takes on different tones. The decisions made in moments of impulse or habit begin to drift toward the reality that the subconscious now holds as its operative truth. The city is not merely occupied, it is transformed from within, without a single visible act of force. The logical power of the Trojan horse analogy extends even further when we examine the element of timing. The Greeks did not send the horse in at noon, when the Trojans were alert, armed, and actively suspicious of every movement outside their walls. They sent it in after a long period of withdrawal, after the observable threat had apparently retreated, after the defensive vigilance had relaxed, after the Trojans had allowed themselves to feel that the siege was over. This timing is precisely mirrored in the Theta gateway's position in the daily cycle. It comes at the end of the day, after the full cycle of waking activity has exhausted the alertness of the conscious mind. It comes when the body is horizontal, when the eyes are closed, when the entire biological system is signaling to the conscious mind that it is time to stand down. It comes when the guards are not merely tired, but are biologically mandated by the sleep cycle to cease their function. The Trojan horse could only work at that specific moment of relaxed vigilance. So too, the Theta gateway can only deliver its full creative power at that specific moment of biological openness. It is worth addressing the objection that occasionally arises in the logical mind at this point. If the subconscious is so powerful and so responsive to the Theta imprint, why does it not instantly manifest the desired reality? Why is there a delay between the planting of the seed and the appearance of the fruit? The answer is built into the architecture of the analogy itself. The soldiers of the Trojan horse, once inside the city, did not immediately conquer Troy in the same instant they emerged from the horse. There was a process, a period of action, of movement through the city, of the gradual restructuring of a system that had been established and reinforced over a very long period. The conquest was inevitable from the moment the horse passed through the gates. But inevitability is not instantaneity. The subconscious mind works through the available mechanisms of physical reality, through people, events, coincidences, opportunities, inspired impulses, and these mechanisms operate in time. The seed is planted instantaneously at the moment of correct theta imprinting. The growth unfolds through the natural processes of the physical world. Your function, after the planting, is not to dig up the seed every morning to check on its progress. It is to trust the law and to allow the process to unfold, maintaining your new sense of self, your new inner blueprint, through every waking hour, until the physical evidence confirms what you already knew to be true from the moment the horse passed through the gates. There is a further dimension of the Trojan horse logic that speaks directly to one of the most common errors practitioners make: the error of using different methods on different days, of vacillating between techniques, of supplementing the Theta practice with desperate daytime affirmations that actually undermine the work done at the gateway. In the Trojan horse story, once the horse was inside the city, the Greeks did not continue their siege. They withdrew completely. They removed the visible evidence of their effort. The absence of the daytime assault was essential to the success of the nighttime infiltration. In the same way, once you have planted your seed at the Theta gateway, the most powerful thing you can do during the waking hours is to cease the assault, to stop fighting the existing conditions with willpower and force, to allow the inner reorganization to proceed without interference. This does not mean passivity. It means a specific kind of active trust, a conscious, disciplined maintenance of the feeling state associated with the wish fulfilled, a refusal to pick up the weapons of doubt and worry and reinforce the old city walls. The battle is won at the gateway. The daylight hours are the aftermath, and your job in the aftermath is not to refight the battle, but to inhabit the victory. The most precise and perhaps the most humbling implication of the Trojan horse logic is what it reveals about the relationship between effort and result in the science of mind. The Greeks spent 10 years in futile direct assault, expending enormous resources, suffering enormous losses, achieving nothing. And then, with one act of intelligent strategy, executed at the correct moment with the correct method, the entire war was resolved. The disproportion between the effort of the horse strategy and the result it achieved is not a contradiction of the principle of cause and effect. It is its most perfect illustration. The cause, the correctly designed, correctly timed, correctly executed Theta imprint, was precisely proportioned to its effect. It only appears disproportionate when measured against the misdirected efforts of the daytime. 10 years of assault at the wrong entrance, with the wrong method, at the wrong time of day, produced nothing. One night of stealth through the correct entrance, with the correct method, at the correct time of the biological cycle, produced everything. The gateway is your Trojan horse, and it opens without fail every single night. The logical extension of this understanding is the most important operational conclusion you can draw from this entire section. The Theta gateway is not a backup plan. It is not a supplement to your daytime practice. It is not one tool among many in a spiritual toolkit. It is the primary cause. Everything else, your daytime attitude, your habitual thoughts, your conscious affirmations, is secondary to the blueprint you install in the deep subconscious through the precise use of the theta state. This is not to say that your daytime thoughts are irrelevant. They are not. The pattern you hold during waking hours either reinforces or undermines the blueprint you installed at the gateway. But the installation itself, the moment of true creative first cause, happens at the threshold of sleep. This is why Neville returned to this teaching again and again, across decades of work, in city after city, to audience after audience. He was not merely offering a useful technique. He was pointing at the singular most important functional truth about the mechanics of human creativity. The last state of consciousness you occupy as you cross the threshold into sleep is the command that your subconscious will execute for the next 24 hours. This is the law, this is the Trojan horse, is the E, and tonight, you are going to choose precisely what you send through the gates. Every civilization that has touched the deep science of the mind has encoded this principle in one form or another, in the prayers said before sleep, in every religious tradition, in the meditations prescribed at twilight in esoteric schools, in the modern clinical protocols of hypnotherapy that exploit precisely this theta window for deep behavioral reprogramming. The convergence is not coincidental. It is the recognition, reached through entirely different paths and entirely different methodological frameworks, of the same immovable truth. The threshold of sleep is where the architecture of reality is most amenable to redesign. Neville Goddard, building on this ancient recognition with his own extraordinary precision and his own lived, tested experience, gave us the most operationally clear and practically usable articulation of this truth that has ever been committed to language. The Trojan horse principle is not a theory that might work. It is the description of a law that cannot fail. Your task, from this moment forward, is simply to use it correctly. The technique of the Theta gateway begins not with imagination, but with the body. This is a point that most practitioners overlook because they are eager to move immediately to the content of the visualization, to the scene of the wish fulfilled, to the exciting work of creation. But Neville Goddard was specific and deliberate in his instruction about the prerequisite physical state, because he understood that without the correct physical foundation, the imaginative work cannot achieve the depth necessary to penetrate to the level of true subconscious imprinting. The first step, therefore, is not a creative act. It is an act of radical physical surrender. Neville called it immobilization, and he described the required state with striking precision. He told his students to make themselves feel like a wooden Indian, a carved, solid, unmoving figure with no impulse, no urgency, no physical desire. The body must be so completely stilled that the idea of moving any part of it becomes entirely foreign, not suppressed, not held down with effort, simply absent. The reason for this specific instruction is architectural. The physical body, when it is in a state of even minor muscular tension or restlessness, continues to send a stream of proprioceptive signals to the brain, signals of physical presence, physical location, physical engagement with the material world. These signals maintain the brain's orientation in physical reality. They remind the conscious mind that it is here, in this body, in this room, in this set of physical circumstances. And as long as the conscious mind is being reminded of its physical location with any degree of insistence, it cannot fully release its grip on the judgment of what is. The body's tension is the guard's coffee. It keeps him awake. Complete physical stillness, on the other hand, begins to dissolve the brain's orientation in physical space. The proprioceptive signals diminish. The conscious mind begins to lose its grip on the precise coordinates of the present physical reality. And in losing those coordinates, it begins to soften, to float, to become the open receptive field that the theta state requires. The instruction to feel like a wooden Indian is, therefore, not merely about physical comfort. It is a precise neurological preparation. It is the deliberate engineering of the conditions under which the brain will naturally and inevitably begin its transition from the beta waveform of full wakefulness through the alpha waveform of relaxed alertness and into the theta waveform of the hypnagogic state. This transition is not something you can force. You cannot command the brain to enter theta, any more than you can command a river to flow uphill. What you can do is create the conditions, the precise hydraulic landscape, that makes the downward flow of consciousness from beta to theta as natural, as smooth, and as inevitable as water seeking its level. Immobilization is the primary hydraulic condition. The complete stillness of the body is the channel that directs the river of consciousness toward the gateway. The practical execution of immobilization begins before you attempt any imaginal work. You must lie flat on your back, in a position that requires no muscular effort to maintain, arms at your sides or loosely folded, legs uncrossed, the entire length of the spine released into the surface beneath you. Some practitioners find a comfortable chair with full head and neck support equally effective, provided that the position can be maintained without any muscular engagement. The critical variable is not the specific position, but the achievement of complete muscular release. Begin at the feet. Direct your attention to the feet and consciously release every small tension held there. Move upward through the calves, the thighs, the lower back, the abdomen, the chest, the arms and hands, the shoulders, the neck, the jaw, the muscles around the eyes. The jaw and the area around the eyes are particularly important, as these are the sites where emotional and psychological tension is most frequently held in the body, and their release signals to the nervous system a depth of safety and surrender that is essential for the transition into theta. As you move through this systematic release of physical tension, you will notice that the quality of your awareness begins to change. The room around you begins to recede slightly from the center of your attention. The sounds of the environment, which in the fully alert state were sharp and individually distinct, begin to merge into a more undifferentiated background. Your sense of your own body begins to soften at its edges, the precise demarcations between your skin and the air around it becoming less sharply defined. These are the first signs that the brain is beginning its descent from beta toward alpha, and they are signs to be welcomed without excitement, observed without grasping. Any surge of emotion, even excitement about the process, will briefly re-engage the arousal systems of the conscious mind and interrupt the descent. The correct attitude at this stage is not enthusiasm, but quiet, steady, patient observation. You are watching the guard begin to drowse. You must not make a sound. The quality of physical presence required at this stage is precisely captured by Neville's description of the wooden Indian, and it is worth dwelling on this image with some care. A wooden Indian has no impulse. There is no part of it that wants to scratch its nose, shift its weight, or adjust its position. There is no part of it that is about to do anything. It exists in a state of pure, settled, unreactive presence. It is not asleep. It is not unconscious. But it is completely free of the restless energy of physical self-maintenance. This is exactly the state you are cultivating. You are not trying to fall asleep. You are not trying to relax so deeply that you lose consciousness. You are cultivating the precise condition of absolute physical stillness combined with absolute mental alertness. The paradoxical state of the body being inert while the attention remains sharp and directional. This paradox is the theta gateway's most essential characteristic. It is the place where the physical has been sufficiently stilled to cease its interference, but the mental has not yet dissolved into unconsciousness. It is the narrow edge between the worlds, and it is upon this edge that the most powerful creative work of your life will occur. The duration of this preparation phase varies between individuals and between sessions. For a practiced student of this method, the physical immobilization can be achieved in as little as 5 to 10 minutes. For a beginner, it may require 20 minutes or more of conscious, patient release. The temptation to rush this phase, to declare the body relaxed enough and proceed immediately to the imaginal work, is one of the most common errors in practice, and its consequences are predictable. An insufficiently prepared body will continue to generate the distracting signals that keep the conscious mind tethered to physical reality, preventing the depth of trance required for true subconscious imprinting. The scenes you run in a state of insufficient physical surrender will feel thin, effortful and lacking in the specific quality that Neville described as the tones of reality, the vivid, present tense, sensory depth that distinguishes a theta-level imprint from a daytime visualization. Do not rush the foundation. The entire structure rests upon it. As the physical immobilization deepens, something else begins to happen that is crucial to understand and to manage correctly. The mind, freed from the task of monitoring the body's physical engagement with the world, begins to drift. Thoughts arise unbidden, fragments of the day's experience, half-formed anxieties, random associations, the meaningless debris of the conscious mind's normal chatter. This is not a sign of failure. It is not a sign that the method is not working. It is, in fact, one of the most reliable indicators that the brain is transitioning into alpha and approaching the theta threshold. In the fully alert beta state, the conscious mind is too busy with directed thought to generate this kind of unfocused drift. The drift is the guard beginning to nod. The appearance of these random, loosely associated thoughts is the neurological signature of the conscious mind's analytical grip beginning to loosen. Observe them. Do not engage with them. Do not follow any thread of association. Simply allow each thought to arise and pass, like clouds moving across a sky you are watching from a distance. Your task at this stage is pure witnessing, a clean, spacious, patient awareness that neither grasps nor resists, but simply waits at the door. The final stage of the mental preparation, the last phase before the actual imaginal work begins, is what might be called the moment of sensing the threshold itself. You will know when you are approaching the theta gateway, because the quality of your inner awareness will change in a recognizable way. The random thoughts will begin to take on a slightly more vivid, slightly more autonomous quality. They will begin to feel less like your own thoughts and more like images arising from somewhere else, images with a slightly dreamlike independence. You may begin to notice hypnagogic imagery, brief, spontaneous visual flashes that arise and dissolve without any direction from your will. The sense of your body's position in space may shift or become briefly uncertain. There may be a sensation of gentle heaviness or conversely of a light floating quality, as though the body has lost some of its usual gravitational definition. These are the unmistakable signatures of the theta threshold. You are at the edge of the abyss. The gates of Troy are opening. The guard is asleep. And now, only now, is the moment to introduce your Trojan horse. Only now is it time to begin the infiltration protocol. The importance of waiting for this threshold before beginning the imaginal work cannot be overemphasized. Many practitioners begin their scene running immediately upon lying down, before even the alpha state has been reached, before the critical faculty has softened to any significant degree. The scenes they run under these conditions are processed by a still alert conscious mind that evaluates, judges, and resists them. They have the quality of daytime fantasy, pleasant perhaps, but lacking the penetrating depth that theta imprinting requires. The subconscious receives a faint signal, muffled by the interference of the conscious mind's resistance. The blueprint is weak, inconsistent, and easily overridden by the dominant existing patterns. By waiting, with patience and with the quiet alert readiness of a sentinel at a post, until the unmistakable signs of the theta threshold appear, you ensure that when you do introduce your scene, you are introducing it to a field of maximum receptivity, maximum depth, and minimum resistance. You are not firing a shot into the air and hoping the bullet finds its mark. You are placing the seed directly into the center of the most fertile ground that exists in the entire daily cycle of your consciousness. Wait for the threshold. The law rewards patience with precision. There is a dimension of this preparation that goes beyond the merely technical, and it speaks to the attitude you must carry into the gateway, the inner orientation that determines, at a level deeper than technique, the quality of the imprint you are about to make. Neville frequently spoke of the necessity of approaching the subconscious with a quality of love, not sentiment, but the deep, creative, unified love that he associated with the relationship between the father and the mother principles, the conscious and the subconscious. This is not an instruction about feeling affectionate toward your own mind. It is an instruction about the quality of presence with which you approach the act of creation. You are not coming to the gateway as a petitioner, begging for a favor. You are not coming as a soldier assaulting a fortification. You are coming as an architect, approaching the most responsive and faithful contractor in existence, with a blueprint so clear, so complete, and so inhabited by the full feeling of its own realization that the contractor receives it not as an assignment, but as a reality already accomplished. The love in this instruction is the love of certainty, the deep, warm, settled knowing that what you are planting has already grown. It is the feeling of the gardener who kneels to plant a seed while already seeing, with complete inner conviction, the full-grown tree. This quality of certainty, not hope, not wish, but settled knowing, is the final preparatory element that must be established before the imaginal work begins. It is not achieved by telling yourself to feel certain. It is achieved by the combination of everything that precedes it. The deep physical immobilization that has removed the body's competing signals. The patient waiting at the alpha threshold that has allowed the conscious mind's resistance to soften. The quiet witnessing of the mind's drift that has demonstrated your ability to remain present without grasping. And finally, the full understanding of the law that you have built through careful study. When you know that the law is real, when you have understood its mechanics with the same clarity with which you understand that a seed planted in fertile soil will grow, then the act of planting is not an act of hope. It is an act of quiet, settled, confident application of a known principle. And that quality of settled application, that absence of urgency, that presence of calm authority, is the last element that makes the imprint at the Theta gateway not merely a sensation in the mind, but a command issued to the universe with the force and the certainty of a first cause. The full preparation, correctly executed, transforms the Theta gateway from a passive biological event into an active creative ceremony. Every step of the immobilization process, from the first conscious release of tension in the feet to the final, still, threshold sensing awareness of the Theta edge, is not merely preamble. It is itself a progressive act of alignment between the thinker and the law, a systematic dismantling of every barrier between the desire and its fulfillment. By the time you arrive at the threshold, ready to introduce your scene, you are not merely relaxed. You are aligned physically, mentally, and intentionally with the single most powerful creative moment of your entire daily cycle. The gateway is not simply a door that happens to be open. It is a door that you have deliberately, patiently, and skillfully prepared yourself to enter. And on the other side of that door is not merely a pleasant mental experience. On the other side is the creative substance of the universe itself, waiting, as it has always been waiting, for the precise, clear, feeling-filled blueprint that will tell it what to build next. The gate stands open. The preparation is complete. The conscious guard has fallen asleep at his post, and the deep creative medium of the subconscious lies before you in its full, unconditional receptivity. Everything that follows, every step of the infiltration protocol, every nuance of sensory construction, every careful management of the scene and the loop, proceeds from this foundation. Without this foundation, the technique is an exercise in daytime fantasy. With it, the technique is the precise, reliable, scientifically consistent act of installing a new blueprint in the most powerful creative medium available to the human being. You are ready. The protocol begins now. The infiltration protocol is the operational heart of the Theta Gateway method. It is the specific sequence of actions that transforms the prepared Theta state from a window of possibility into a moment of actual creation. Every step of this protocol exists for a precise reason, grounded in the psychology of the subconscious mind and the neurobiology of the pre-sleep state. None of it is arbitrary, and understanding why each step is designed as it is will enable you to execute it with the authority and precision of a master engineer, rather than the hesitant hope of a student following instructions they do not fully understand. Step 1 of the protocol is what we call the physical shutdown, and the term shutdown is deliberate and exact. A computer that has been properly shut down does not merely have its screen darkened. Every running process has been terminated. Every connection to external inputs has been closed. Every system that consumes processing power has been systematically suspended. The physical shutdown in the Theta protocol is this precise equivalent. You have already performed the immobilization during the preparation phase, but now, at the theta threshold, you must complete the shutdown with an additional act of conscious intention. You must command the physical avatar, Neville's term for the body, to fully and finally release its claim on your attention. The specific quality Neville described was this: your body is in a state where you could move if you chose to, but you simply have no desire to move. Not paralysis, not suppression, indifference. You are aware that the body exists, but you are no longer identified with it as the center of your reality. Your center has shifted. You are withdrawing from the periphery of the physical and moving toward the creative center of pure imagination. This shift of center, from body to mind, from physical to imaginal, is the most powerful single act in the entire protocol, and it happens not through force but through the complete, voluntary final release of physical identification. Step 2 is the construction of the micro-scene, and this step requires the most careful and precise creative work you will do in the entire practice. The temptation, especially for those who have practiced visualization in the daytime, is to construct a detailed, extended scene, a narrative with a beginning, middle, and end, with multiple locations and characters and a full arc of experience. This approach, while potentially effective in the fully alert state, is not suited to the theta threshold for a very specific neurological reason. In the theta state, the mind's capacity for sustained linear narrative has been significantly reduced. The brain in theta is not in its storytelling mode, it is in its feeling reception mode. It processes immediate vivid sensory experience with extraordinary depth and faithfulness, but it processes extended narrative sequences with diminishing attention and increasing drift. A 2-hour mental movie in the theta state will begin to dissolve into actual dreaming long before it reaches its conclusion, and the subconscious will receive only fragments, possibly contradictory fragments, of the intended blueprint. This is worse than no imprint at all, because a fragmented or contradictory blueprint generates confused and inconsistent results. The micro-scene is the solution. It is a single, brief, no more than 3 seconds of imagined time, sensory fragment that implies the total fulfillment of the desire without narrating it. This is the crucial distinction. The micro-scene does not show the journey to the fulfillment. It does not show the process by which the desire was achieved. It presents only a single crystalline moment of the fulfilled reality already in existence. A moment so specific, so sensory, and so loaded with implication that the subconscious mind receives it not as a fragment, but as a complete and final statement of fact. The classic examples are precise and instructive. A handshake, the specific, firm, real pressure of another person's hand grasping yours in congratulation, the warmth of the grip, the slight sound of the contact, the feeling of a wedding ring on the appropriate finger, the slight unfamiliar weight, the smooth coolness of the metal against the skin, the glance down at it with the quiet, settled recognition that it belongs there. Hearing a specific voice, belonging to a specific person who matters to you, saying a specific word of congratulation, not a speech, but a single phrase, "I knew you could do it." The precise timbre of that voice, the emotional weight of those words arriving in your ears with the completeness of a fact already true. Each of these micro-scenes shares 3 structural characteristics that make them architecturally sound for theta imprinting. First, they are implying rather than depicting. They do not show you getting the job, finding the partner, or achieving the success. They show you in a single moment that could only exist if the desired condition had already been achieved. The subconscious mind, receiving this implication, fills in the entire preceding reality with absolute faithfulness, not by narrating it, but by adopting it as its operative assumption about the state of the world. Second, they are sensory rather than visual. They engage the hands, the skin, the ears, the proprioceptive sense of the body, the deep physical senses that communicate most directly with the preconscious layers of the mind. A purely visual scene occupies only one channel of sensory experience, a scene that also includes touch, sound, smell, and the kinesthetic sense of bodily position and movement occupies multiple channels simultaneously, creating a much richer and more penetrating imprint. Third, they are brief enough to loop. And this brings us directly to step 3. Step 3 is the sensory loop, and it is the step that transforms the single microscene from a momentary experience into a persistent, deepening imprint. Once you have constructed your microscene with the sensory richness described above, you begin to run it, to experience it, not observe it, repeatedly, cyclically, without beginning or end. The scene does not play through and then pause while you consciously restart it. It plays, arrives at its conclusion, and without any gap, any break, or any conscious effort of will, it begins again from its starting point. It is a loop, a circuit, and you are the current running through it. The reason for the loop is again architectural. A single experience of the microscene, however vivid, produces a single imprint. A repeated, cyclically deepening experience of the same scene, run over and over while the brain deepens from alpha into theta, produces what might be called a groove in the subconscious, a channel of ever-increasing depth through which the new blueprint flows with ever-increasing power and permanence. Each cycle of the loop does not merely repeat the imprint, it deepens it, the way a river deepens its channel not by moving more water, but by moving the same water consistently over the same path over time. The addition of sensory data to each successive cycle of the loop is not a separate action from the looping itself. It is the natural organic development of the loop as the theta state deepens. In the first cycle of the loop, you might feel the general quality of the handshake, the presence of the contact, the implication of congratulation. In the second cycle, the specific texture of the skin begins to emerge. In the third, the temperature of the grip. In the fourth, the slight sound of the contact and the ambient sound of the room in which this imagined moment is occurring. In the fifth, the weight and position of your own body as you stand in this moment of fulfillment. Each cycle adds a layer of sensory specificity, and with each added layer, the scene acquires more of what Neville called the tones of reality, that precise quality of felt, lived, present tense sensory experience that the subconscious cannot distinguish from actual physical reality. This indistinguishability is not a side effect of the technique, it is its purpose. The subconscious does not know the difference between a vividly imagined experience and a physically lived one. This is not a limitation, it is the mechanism. The moment the scene achieves the tones of reality, the moment it feels, at the level of deep theta sensation, as real as anything you have ever physically experienced, it has been accepted by the subconscious as a fact of reality. The blueprint has been installed. The law is in motion. The quality of the tones of reality deserves careful examination because it is the standard against which you must measure the success of each theta session. It is not a dramatic sensation. It does not announce itself with bells or rushes of electricity or overwhelming emotion. It is a quiet, subtle, deeply settled quality of presence, the sense that what you are experiencing is not a thought about a thing, but the thing itself. The handshake does not feel like you are imagining a handshake. It feels like a handshake. The ring does not feel like you are imagining the weight of a ring. It feels like the weight of an actual ring on your actual finger. The voice does not feel like you are imagining a voice. It feels like you are hearing an actual voice. This shift from imagining a thing to experiencing the thing is the shift from alpha to deep theta, and it is the crossing of the threshold that marks the moment of true subconscious imprinting. Train yourself to recognize this quality, to seek it patiently through the deepening of the loop, and to maintain it without grasping, for grasping, as we have noted, will briefly lift the brain back toward alpha and thin the quality of the experience. The infiltration protocol also requires the specific management of attention during the loop, a management that is active without being effortful, directed without being rigid. The attention must remain gently anchored to the micro-scene throughout the loop, neither hardening into forced concentration nor softening into passive drift. The correct quality of attention is most precisely described as curious intimacy, the same quality of attention with which you might examine a beautiful object you are holding in your hands, turning it slowly, noticing new details with each rotation, without any urgency or agenda. This quality of relaxed, interested sensory attention is perfectly compatible with the theta state, and in fact, it is the type of attention that deepens the theta state rather than disrupting it. Forced, tense, effortful concentration disrupts theta. Soft, curious, sensory engagement deepens it. This is why the instruction about the micro-scene being brief is so important. It gives the attention enough content to remain engaged without requiring the kind of sustained, effortful narrative tracking that would pull the brain back toward beta. There is a specific instruction from Neville's teaching about the perspective from which the micro-scene must be experienced that is so critical to the success of the protocol that it warrants the most careful and emphatic treatment. The scene must be experienced exclusively from the first-person perspective. You must be looking through your own eyes, not watching yourself from the outside, not observing the scene as a spectator in a theater, but inhabiting it fully as the living, present, feeling subject of the experience. This is not merely a stylistic preference, it is a structural necessity, and its violation is one of the most common causes of failure in practitioners who report doing everything right and getting no results. When you see yourself in the scene, when you observe your own body from an external vantage point, you are giving the subconscious a signal that the experience is happening to another person. The subconscious receives this signal with perfect faithfulness, and it builds accordingly. It builds a reality in which the desired condition is happening to someone who looks like you, but is observably not you, because you are watching them rather than being them. The third-person perspective is the single most damaging technical error in visualization practice, and its correction, the complete, immersive inhabitation of the first-person perspective, is the single most powerful upgrade most practitioners can make. The infiltration protocol is, at its most essential, an act of complete presence, not the presence of ordinary waking awareness, which is always slightly removed from experience by the commentary of the analytical mind. The presence of deep theta, the total immersion of the subjective self in the sensory fabric of the desired reality, without any part of the attention remaining outside the scene to observe, judge, or evaluate. In this state of complete presence, the boundary between imagination and reality dissolves, and the subconscious mind, which has no instrument for measuring the difference between the two, receives the imprinted scene as its new operating reality. This is the moment of creation. This is the mathematical certainty at the heart of Neville's teaching. The cause has been established, the effect must follow. There is no mechanism in the universe by which a correctly imprinted blueprint can fail to externalize in the physical world. The law is not selective, not capricious, not influenced by the worthiness or the history or the current circumstances of the thinker who uses it. It responds to the pattern. It builds what the pattern commands. And the pattern, correctly installed at the Theta gateway through the precise execution of this protocol, is now alive in the deepest and most creative level of your being, growing in the dark, being cultivated by forces you cannot see and mechanisms you cannot consciously manage, moving toward its physical expression with the same silent, inevitable certainty with which a seed moves toward the light. The final element of the infiltration protocol must now be stated with complete and unambiguous clarity, because it is the element upon which the entire success of the method ultimately depends, and it is the element that is most frequently misunderstood, neglected, or undermined by the practitioner's own unconscious habits. You must fall asleep while inside the loop, not after the loop, not following a period of reviewing the loop's success while the loop is actively running. The final moment of your conscious experience, the last scene your mind holds before the threshold of sleep takes you, must be the micro-scene of the wish fulfilled. This is the post-technique, and it is not a step added after the protocol. It is the protocol's culmination, the moment toward which every prior step has been directed. Everything, the immobilization, the threshold sensing, the scene construction, the sensory deepening, the looping, everything has been preparation for this precise, irreplaceable moment, falling asleep inside the reality of the fulfilled desire. What follows in Part 4 will address precisely what stands between most practitioners and this moment, and how to master it. The Theta Gateway is the most powerful creative tool available to the human being in their daily cycle, and yet the overwhelming majority of those who attempt to use it report inconsistent results. Nights when the method seems to work with extraordinary clarity, followed by nights when the entire practice dissolves into frustrated drift or unconscious sleep, without any sense of having accomplished the imprinting. The reason for this inconsistency is not a flaw in the method. The law does not have inconsistent nights. The reason is a cluster of specific, identifiable, and entirely correctable errors in execution. And of these errors, the one that is responsible for the greatest percentage of failures has a precise name. Neville himself identified it, and its identification in this teaching has been introduced as the unconscious drift. It is the fatal mistake, not because it is irreversible, but because it occurs silently, without announcement, and by the time you notice it, you have already used the gateway to plant the wrong seed. The guard did not stop you. You walked through the open door and you planted the seeds of your own defeat without ever meaning to. The mechanics of the drift are exactly what the name implies. You have performed the immobilization. You have reached the Theta threshold. You have begun your loop. The scene is running. The sensory quality is deepening. And then, without any conscious decision, without any moment you can point to, the loop begins to change. The handshake softens and becomes the memory of an argument. The wedding ring fades and becomes an image of the empty apartment. The voice of congratulation transforms, imperceptibly at first, into the voice of a critic or a doubter. The scene has drifted. Your attention has been pulled from the deliberate blueprint you were installing and has been captured by the strongest existing patterns in the subconscious. The patterns of the current reality, the habitual worry thoughts, the emotional residue of the day's events. These patterns did not force their way into your attention. They did not overcome your resistance. They simply flowed into the space created by a momentary relaxation of your intentional focus. And because the Theta state removes resistance uniformly, not just the resistance to new blueprints, but the resistance to old ones, they were able to take hold with the same speed and depth that you were hoping to achieve with your intended scene. You fall asleep inside them, and the law, impartial and precise, receives this unintended blueprint and begins building it with the same faithful commitment it would have given to your intended one. This is the full horror of the drift, stated without gentleness and without consolation. Because you deserve the truth delivered clearly, the drift is not a wasted night. It is an actively harmful one. It is not a night when nothing was planted. It is a night when the wrong seeds were planted in the most fertile soil of your entire daily cycle, with the full, unresisted power of the Theta state behind them. Every night that ends with the drift, rather than with the intended loop, is a night when the existing blueprint, the one generating the circumstances you are trying to transcend, has been reinforced with maximum efficiency. This is why you can use this method for weeks and feel, paradoxically, that your unwanted circumstances have become more entrenched rather than less. You are not imagining this. You have been using the gateway to reinforce the prison rather than to build the new architecture, and you have been doing it in the most powerful creative window of your day, night after night, without knowing it. The drift is not a minor inconvenience. It is the mechanism by which most people's creative power is turned against them, and its mastery is the single most important skill in this entire practice. The correction of the drift requires a very specific type of mental discipline that must be clearly distinguished from the kind of tense, effortful, forced concentration that would disrupt the Theta state itself. You cannot correct the drift by gripping the scene more tightly. Tightening the mental grip breaks the Theta threshold and pulls the brain back toward Beta, producing a kind of strained, effortful pseudo-visualization that has none of the penetrating depth of true Theta imprinting. The correction is not force. It is what might be called the gentle return, the calm, patient, non-judgmental redirection of attention back to the intended scene every single time the drift begins. The moment you notice that the loop has been replaced by an intrusive thought or a drifting image, and in the early stages of practice, this may happen dozens of times in a single session, you do not fight it, you do not feel frustrated by it, and you do not judge the session as having failed. You simply and quietly return the attention to the micro scene. One gentle, deliberate return of focus. And then you resume the loop. The effectiveness of the gentle return depends entirely on the speed of the correction. The longer a drifting thought is allowed to develop, the more it is permitted to form a narrative, to accumulate emotional charge. to build the sensory qualities that would give it the tones of reality. The more difficult the return becomes, because the drifting thought is itself using the theta state to deepen its own imprint. The ideal correction happens the moment the drift begins, the instant you notice that the scene has changed, or that the loop has paused and been replaced by an intrusive thought. At that precise instant, with the quiet authority of a master redirecting the attention of a distracted student, you return to the first sensory element of the micro-scene, not to the middle of it, not to the most dramatic element, to the beginning. The first sensation, the first touch, the first sound, and you restart the loop from there, allowing it to rebuild its sensory richness cycle by cycle, returning it to the depth at which it was before the drift interrupted it. With consistent practice, the gentle return becomes faster and more automatic. In the early stages of working with this method, the practitioner may spend a significant portion of the session performing returns, noticing the drift, returning, drifting again, returning again, with only brief windows of clean, uninterrupted looping. This is not failure. This is exactly what the early practice of any precision skill looks like. The pianist who is learning a difficult passage does not play it through without error in the first 100 attempts. But with each return, with each patient, non-judgmental correction, the attentional pathways that maintain the chosen scene at the theta threshold are being strengthened in precisely the same way that neural pathways are strengthened by any consistent repeated activation. The discipline of the gentle return is itself a form of subconscious reprogramming, training the deeper layers of the mind to recognize the micro-scene as the default destination of the pre-sleep state, rather than the habitual worry patterns that have previously occupied it. Every return is a victory, not a defeat. The second major category of error in the theta practice, distinct from the drift but equally capable of undermining the imprint, is the third-person perspective error, and it requires a separate and fully developed examination because it is so subtle and so natural that most practitioners who make it do not realize they are making it. The mind, particularly when working with visualization techniques that have been taught in the context of daytime practice, tends to default to a perspective outside the scene, a vantage point slightly above and behind the imagined self, from which the practitioner observes themselves going through the motions of the desired reality. It feels like visualization. It produces mental imagery. It even generates a certain quality of positive emotion, the emotion of watching a pleasurable event. But it is not theta imprinting in the sense required by the law. It is at its core a form of the drift, a drift away from the first-person inhabitation of the experience and into the third-person observation of it. The structural reason for this error's failure is exactly as precise as the reason for the drift's failure. The subconscious mind, when receiving a third-person scene, does not experience the event as your reality. It experiences it as an observation of someone else's reality. The signal it receives is not, "I am in this condition." The signal is, "Someone is in this condition, and I am observing them." This distinction, which seems subtle from the perspective of the conscious mind, is enormous from the perspective of the subconscious. The subconscious builds the reality that corresponds to the subject of the experience, to the person who is living it, as opposed to the person who is watching it. If you are watching yourself receive the congratulations, the subconscious builds a reality in which you receive the congratulations as an external event happening to a body you are observing from outside. But the feeling of that event, the specific, personal, first-person quality of being the one who is congratulated, is not present in the imprint. And it is the feeling, not the image, that is the actual seed. A third-person scene produces a third-person imprint, a kind of detached observational relationship to the desired reality that never quite arrives at the full, settled, inhabited certainty of the first-person experience. The desired condition remains perpetually out there rather than here, now, mine. The correction of the third-person perspective error is, like the correction of the drift, a matter of conscious attention redirected at the moment of detection. The key test, applicable at any moment during the loop, is this: are you seeing this scene or are you feeling it? If the dominant quality of the experience is visual, if it looks like a movie that you are watching, however vivid and however pleasant, you have drifted into the third person. The correction is immediate and specific. Drop the visual image completely. Close the inner eye. Redirect the entire attention from the visual channel to the sensory kinesthetic channel. Feel the scene. Feel the pressure of the handshake before you see the hands. Feel the weight of the ring before you see the ring. Feel the emotional quality of the congratulation, the warmth in the chest, the slight expansion of the breath, before you allow any visual element to return. Build the scene from the inside out, from the feeling outward to the image rather than from the outside in, from the image inward to the feeling. This reversal of the construction sequence is the most reliable method for maintaining the first-person perspective throughout the loop, because it anchors the entire experience in the body of the imagined self, in the feeling which is the self, rather than in the visual presentation of a scene that can be observed from any perspective, including the external one. The relationship between these two eras, the drift and the third-person perspective, is worth noting because they share a common root cause. Both are manifestations of the conscious mind's habitual tendency to maintain a layer of separation between itself and its experience. The conscious mind, in its fully alert daytime function, is constitutionally disposed to observe, to analyze, and to compare. It is always slightly apart from experience, always the observer rather than the participant, always maintaining the critical distance required for its function of evaluation and judgment. These tendencies do not vanish completely at the theta threshold. They diminish, sometimes dramatically, but they leave residual patterns, habitual postures of the attention that continue to shape the quality of the experience even in the pre-sleep state. The drift is the residual pattern of the mind's tendency to wander. The third-person error is the residual pattern of the mind's tendency to observe. Both must be recognized, addressed, and systematically corrected through the patient discipline of the gentle return and the inside-out reconstruction of the first-person perspective. With consistent nightly practice, the mastery of these two corrections transforms the quality of the theta session from intermittent and uncertain to reliable and deeply effective. The practitioner, who has disciplined the drift and mastered the first-person perspective, will begin to notice a specific and unmistakable shift in the quality of their pre-sleep experience, a quality that Neville associated with the absolute confirmation that the imprint has been correctly made. The scene will cease to feel like a practice and begin to feel like a fact. The loop will acquire a quality of naturalness and inevitability. It will feel less like something you are doing and more like something you are in. The tones of reality will deepen to a point where the boundary between the imagined scene and the state of actual physical experience becomes genuinely indiscernible. You will find yourself uncertain, for a brief and beautiful moment, whether you're imagining the handshake or actually receiving it, whether you are imagining the ring's weight or actually feeling it. This uncertainty is not confusion. It is the sign of the successful imprint. It is the signal that the Trojan horse has passed through the gates and the soldiers are inside the walls. It is the mathematical certainty of the law, confirming that the cause has been correctly established and the effect is now inevitable. The final error to be addressed in this section, less common than the drift or the perspective error, but significant in its impact, is what might be called the emotional flooding error. The tendency, particularly among practitioners who have been working with deep emotional engagement, to allow the feeling state within the loop to escalate from the settled certainty of the wish fulfilled into the heightened excitement of a wished-for wish. This distinction is crucial. The correct emotional quality for the theta imprint is not excitement. It is not gratitude of the overwhelming tearful variety. It is not the peak emotional experience of someone who has just in this moment received wonderful unexpected news. It is the settled, quiet, taken for granted emotional quality of someone for whom the desired condition has simply become the ordinary fabric of life. The millionaire does not walk around in a state of constant astonishment at their wealth. They experience it as normal. The deeply loved person does not constantly marvel at being loved. They experience it as the natural condition of their existence. It is this quality of settled normality, the emotional signature of a reality that has been fully assimilated rather than recently discovered, that the theta imprint must carry. Excitement, while pleasant and temporarily motivating, signals to the subconscious that the desired condition is extraordinary, unexpected, and therefore outside the normal range of the subject's reality. And the subconscious faithfully builds accordingly, maintaining the desired condition as exceptional and rare, rather than as the consistent, stable, permanent new normal. Plant the seed of the ordinary, harvest the extraordinary. There is a single instruction from Neville Goddard that functions as the complete summary of everything the Theta Gateway method requires, and it arrives with the density and the authority of a command rather than a suggestion. Neville wrote, "Sleep conceals the creative act, but when you awake, the evidence of it will surround you." And in another formulation, equally precise and equally complete, what you feel yourself to be as you fall asleep is the measure of your expression in your waking hours. These two statements, taken together, constitute a complete operational manual for the creation of reality through the Theta Gateway, and their implications deserve to be unfolded with the full care and precision that their extraordinary depth demands. Sleep conceals the creative act. This is not a poetic observation. It is a functional description of the mechanics of creation at the subconscious level. The creative act, the installation of the blueprint, the imprinting of the desired reality upon the universal creative substance, does not happen in the visible, trackable, causally transparent realm of waking experience. It happens in the hidden depths of the subconscious, in the darkness of sleep, through mechanisms that the conscious mind cannot observe, direct, or interfere with. This is not a limitation of the process, it is its protection. The seed, once planted in the dark soil of the subconscious, grows in darkness, not because it is secret, but because the conditions of its growth are precisely those conditions that the light of conscious scrutiny would disrupt. The gardener who digs up the seed every morning to check whether it is growing will not grow a garden. The thinker who, after performing the Theta imprint, immediately begins to analyze whether it worked, to compare the current external circumstances against the desired blueprint, to worry about whether the subconscious has received the correct signal, that thinker is digging up the seed. The concealment of the creative act by sleep is the system's built-in protection mechanism, and Neville's instruction is to honor it, to trust it, to allow the darkness to do what only darkness can do. But when you awake, the evidence of it will surround you. This is the second half of the law, stated with the calm, matter-of-fact certainty of someone who has tested it repeatedly and found it invariably true. The evidence will surround you. Not might surround you. Not will eventually surround you if you maintain perfect practice for a sufficient period. Will surround you. The evidence is the external, physical manifestation of the blueprint installed in the subconscious. The reorganization of circumstances, the arrival of the people and resources and opportunities that correspond to the new inner reality. It may appear as a letter received, a phone call made, an opportunity that presents itself without any traceable causal chain connecting it to your actions. It appears as what the world calls coincidence, but which is, from the perspective of the law, simply the inevitable externalization of an internal cause. The evidence surrounds you because the subconscious mind has reorganized the entire system of your inner reality in accordance with the new blueprint, and the outer world, which has no capacity to be anything other than the precise, faithful, mechanical projection of the inner, has reorganized accordingly. The second of Neville's master instructions, what you feel yourself to be as you fall asleep, is the measure of your expression in your waking hours, is the operational principle, stated in its most complete and most actionable form. The word feel is the critical axis of the statement. Not what you think yourself to be, not what you imagine yourself to be, not what you tell yourself you are, what you feel yourself to be. The feeling is the signal. It is the language that the subconscious speaks, the only signal it registers with the precision required for the installation of a new blueprint. And the moment at which this feeling carries its maximum creative weight, the moment at which it reaches the deepest levels of the subconscious with the least resistance, is the moment of falling asleep. The Theta threshold is not merely the moment when the gates are open. It is the moment when the signal of your felt self-concept penetrates to the deepest possible layer of the subconscious and is received with the maximum possible fidelity and commitment. What you feel yourself to be at this moment is not recorded tentatively. It is recorded absolutely, as the new operative definition of who you are and what your reality contains. The phrase, "the measure of your expression," completes the law with mathematical precision. Your expression, your external reality, your circumstances, your body, your relationships, your financial conditions, is not the product of random events, of fate, of luck, or of the sum of your visible actions. It is the precise, proportionate, faithful expression of the feeling state that you carried into sleep. The measure of the expression is determined entirely by the quality and the consistency of the Theta imprint. A deep, clear, sensory-rich, first-person imprint of the wish fulfilled, maintained at the threshold of sleep without drift and without third-person drift, produces a clear, consistent expression in waking hours. Our shallow, partial, frequently interrupted or unconsciously negative imprint produces a corresponding quality of external expression, confused, contradictory, or reinforcing of the existing unwanted conditions. The measurement is exact. The law is precise. You get in your waking hours exactly what you felt yourself to be as you fell asleep. No more, no less. No exceptions. The master practitioner of the Theta Gateway, equipped with this understanding, brings to their nightly practice a quality of deliberate preparation that extends beyond the mechanical steps of the protocol. They do not simply lie down and begin the sequence. They approach the pre-sleep period as the most important creative moment of their day, the moment that will determine the entire landscape of their next 24 hours, and they bring to it the full weight of their understanding, their intention, and their authority as the thinker who holds the blueprint. They have spent some portion of the preceding day, not in anxious scrutiny of the existing conditions, but in the quiet, settled, creative review of the desired reality, returning periodically to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, allowing it to saturate their waking emotional landscape, not as a performance or an effort, but as the natural expression of a reality they have already decided is true. This daytime maintenance is not the primary creative act. The Theta imprint is the primary creative act. But the daytime maintenance is the fertilizer that enriches the soil of the subconscious before the nightly planting, ensuring that the seed arrives in the most receptive possible condition. The authority with which Neville delivered these instructions, the authority of a man who had tested every principle he taught in the most practical and often the most desperate circumstances of his own life, is itself a critical element of the teaching. He was not offering spiritual comfort to those in difficult circumstances. He was declaring a law to those who needed the most reliable possible instrument for changing those circumstances. His authority was empirical. It was the authority of the engineer who has built the bridge and watched it bear weight. And when he said, "What you feel yourself to be as you fall asleep is the measure of your expression in your waking hours," he was not speaking in metaphor. He was describing the operation of a law as reliable as any law in the physical sciences, a law that will respond to your correct use of it with the same unfailing consistency with which it has been responding all your life to your unconscious use of it. The Theta Gateway has been open every night. The law has been taking its measurements every morning. What changes from this moment forward is what you are measuring. The practical integration of Neville's master instruction into the daily rhythm of life requires one additional discipline that is worth addressing with explicit clarity: the discipline of the first waking thought. If the last state of consciousness before sleep determines the imprint, then the first state of consciousness upon waking is the first test of whether the imprint has taken hold, and it is also the first opportunity of the new day to either reinforce or undermine the blueprint installed the night before. The master practitioner trains themselves, upon the first moment of waking, to immediately return to the feeling of the wish fulfilled before the ordinary concerns of the day can reassert themselves. Not by performing a formal visualization, but by simply inhabiting for 30 seconds to a minute the specific quality of feeling associated with the desired reality, the settled, normal, taken-for-granted feeling of living within it. This morning return is the bridge between the nighttime imprint and the daytime expression. the first act of maintaining the new blueprint in the face of the physical world's persistent testimony to the old one. It is a small act, requiring almost no time and no elaborate technique. But its cumulative effect, practiced daily alongside the Theta protocol, is the progressive transformation of the entire waking emotional landscape until the feeling of the wish fulfilled ceases to be a practice and becomes the natural, default, moment-to-moment experience of the thinker who has mastered the law. This is not an aspiration, it is the mathematical consequence of correct and consistent application of the principle. The law does not withhold, it simply measures. And when you consistently give it the correct input, the output is not a matter of hope, it is a matter of certainty. The full breadth of Neville's teaching on the Theta gateway, from the foundational mechanics of the mental wedding, through the operational precision of the infiltration protocol, through the corrective discipline of the drift and perspective management, to the final complete instruction encoded in his master statement, constitutes a unified, coherent, self-consistent science of creation. Every element supports every other element. Every instruction has a logical necessity that becomes visible when the underlying mechanics are understood. This is not a collection of spiritual suggestions assembled from various sources and loosely organized under a heading. It is a system, as precise as internally consistent and as reliably applicable as any system in the physical sciences. The only variable in its application is you, the thinker, who must understand it deeply enough to apply it correctly, consistently, and with the settled authority of someone who knows that the law does not fail, who knows that the gateway opens every night without exception, and who knows that what they carry through that gate tonight will be present in its physical form in the landscape of their life tomorrow. The legitimacy of Neville Goddard's teaching has always rested, for those who lacked the courage to test it in their own experience, on the question of corroboration, on whether an independent framework, arrived at through entirely different methods, could confirm the reality of the mechanisms he described. That corroboration exists, and it is not peripheral or approximate. It is precise, it is extensively documented, and it aligns with the core principles of the Theta Gateway method with a fidelity that demands serious attention. The field of neuroscience, specifically the study of brainwave frequencies and their corresponding states of consciousness, provides a framework that maps with remarkable accuracy onto the architecture Neville constructed through introspection, spiritual insight, and practical experimentation. The correspondence is not vague. It is specific enough to constitute what the physicist would call an independent verification, a confirmation of the same underlying reality from a completely different observational vantage point. The human brain, in its normal waking and sleeping cycle, produces electrical activity at measurable frequencies that correspond to distinct states of awareness and cognitive function. These frequencies have been classified and studied extensively, and the characteristics of each frequency band have been mapped to specific neurological and psychological functions with a precision that has only deepened as measurement technology has advanced. The brain in full waking alertness, engaged in active problem-solving, critical analysis, external attention, logical reasoning, operates primarily in the beta frequency range, which spans approximately 12 to 30 cycles per second, or hertz. Beta is the frequency of the guard. It is the frequency of the fully armored, fully operational conscious mind, analytical, comparative, defensive, and firmly anchored in the evidence of the physical senses. Every attempt to install a new belief through willpower, forced repetition, or logical persuasion in the beta state is an attempt to bypass a defense system operating at its maximum efficiency. The law does not prohibit change in beta, but the friction is enormous. The resistance is high, and the depth of penetration into the true subconscious is minimal. As the brain transitions from beta towards sleep, it passes through the alpha frequency range, approximately 8 to 12 hertz, which corresponds to a state of relaxed, inwardly directed alertness. In alpha, the external focus of beta softens. The critical faculty begins to reduce its activity. The constant stream of analytical comparison and judgment diminishes. The mind becomes more receptive to suggestion, more capable of sustained inward attention, and less concerned with the evidence of the external senses. This is the state associated with light meditation, creative reverie, and the early stages of effective hypnotherapy. Neville's immobilization practice, correctly performed, reliably produces alpha as its initial result, and this alpha state is the beginning of the softening process, the first stage of the guard's drowsiness, but it is not yet the open gate. Alpha is the anteroom to the theta gateway. It is necessary, and it represents significant progress from beta, but the depth of receptivity available in alpha is still substantially limited compared to what theta provides. The theta frequency band, spanning approximately 4 to 8 Hz, is where the architecture of human consciousness opens to its most extraordinary depth of creative accessibility. Theta is the frequency of the hypnagogic state, the precise neurological condition that the brain occupies in the transition between wakefulness and sleep, the state that Neville identified as the state akin to sleep, and designated as the primary access point to the creative medium of the subconscious. In the theta state, the normal boundaries between the waking conscious mind and the deep subconscious are at their minimum thickness. The critical faculty, which in beta was an impenetrable wall and in alpha was a softened barrier, has in theta become a permeable membrane. Suggestions, images, feelings, and experiences presented to the mind in this state are not evaluated against the existing architecture of reality. They are simply accepted, assimilated into the operative reality of the subconscious, with the same uncritical, unconditional receptivity that the subconscious applies to everything it receives through this channel. This is not a metaphor for what Neville was describing. This is the neurological substrate of what Neville was describing. The gate is not a metaphysical abstraction. It is a measurable, observable, physically real transition in the electrical activity of your brain that occurs every single night. The neurological evidence for the extraordinary creative and learning capacity of the theta state extends well beyond the mere observation of reduced critical faculty. Clinical research into hypnotherapy, which deliberately induces the theta state through specific relaxation protocols, has demonstrated consistently and repeatedly that the theta condition allows for the installation of new behavioral programs, emotional responses, and deep beliefs at a depth and with a permanence that is essentially unachievable through conscious effort in the waking state. The therapeutic literature is filled with case studies demonstrating the resolution of decades-old phobias, deeply ingrained addictive behaviors, and persistent emotional wounds through relatively brief periods of theta-level intervention. These results are not anecdotal curiosities. They are the expected, reproducible, consistent outcomes of a known neurological mechanism, the opening of the subconscious to direct imprinting in the theta state, applied with therapeutic intention. Neville's method is not clinically supervised hypnotherapy, but it operates through the same fundamental neurological mechanism, applied with the specific precision and the deliberate intent that Neville's decades of research and practice had refined into the protocol you are now learning. The most striking single piece of evidence for the extraordinary depth of theta's imprinting capacity comes from the study of childhood cognitive development, specifically the neurological research into the brainwave patterns of children in the first 7 years of life. A child between the ages of 0 and 2 years old spends the vast majority of its neurological active time in the delta frequency range, 0.5 to 4 Hz, the deepest brain state associated with deep sleep in adults. Between the ages of 2 and 6, the child's dominant waking brainwave frequency is theta. From approximately 6 to 12 years, the child's dominant frequency transitions to alpha, and only around the age of 12 do beta waves become the predominant pattern of waking consciousness. This developmental progression is not a peripheral detail of neuroscience. It is the key to understanding why human beings in the first 7 years of life absorb the entirety of their cultural, emotional, relational, and self-conceptual programming with such extraordinary completeness and such extraordinary permanence. The child in those early years is essentially in a continuous waking hypnotic trance. The critical faculty, the guard, has not yet been fully constructed. The gates of the subconscious are wide open. Every experience, every word overheard from a parent, every emotional tone in the household, Every message about worthiness and safety and what the world is like passes directly into the subconscious and is installed as a fundamental bedrock belief about reality. This is why the beliefs installed in early childhood are so extraordinarily resistant to change through adult willpower and positive thinking. They were installed directly, without any critical filtering, at the deepest level of the subconscious during years of continuous theta and delta exposure. They are not beliefs in the way that adult-acquired opinions are beliefs, beliefs that can be argued with, re-evaluated, and changed through persuasion. They are foundational structures as deeply embedded in the architecture of the psyche as the geological bedrock is embedded in the structure of the earth. And the adult who attempts to change them through daytime affirmation is attempting to alter bedrock with a garden trowel, not because the bedrock cannot be changed, but because the tool is insufficient for the depth of the task. The Theta Gateway is the correct tool. It provides access to the same depth of subconscious receptivity, the same theta-level openness that was present during the original installation of these bedrock beliefs. It allows the adult thinker, armed with conscious intention and a precisely designed blueprint, to descend to the level of the original programming and replace it with a new structural reality. This is not the removal of a surface belief. It is the architectural replacement of a foundational one. And it requires the same depth of access, the same theta-level receptivity that was present when the original belief was installed. The implications of this neurological understanding for the practitioner of the Theta Gateway method are both empowering and sobering. They are empowering because they confirm, from an independent and rigorously evidential framework, that the mechanism Neville identified is real, is neurologically grounded, and is capable of producing exactly the kind of deep, permanent subconscious reprogramming that he described. They are sobering because they clarify the depth of the task, the scale of what is being attempted. You are not updating a surface preference or reinforcing a recent thought pattern. You are, if your practice is deep enough and consistent enough, reaching down to the level of bedrock belief and beginning the process of its architectural replacement. This is serious work. It is precision work. It is work that rewards consistency, depth, and the kind of patient, persistent, unglamorous nightly application that builds real results over real time, rather than the dramatic but superficial responses that keep practitioners perpetually satisfied with their process while their outer circumstances remain unchanged. The gateway opens every night. The depth you reach through it is determined by the quality of your preparation and the consistency of your practice. The neurological concept of neuroplasticity, the brain's demonstrated capacity to physically reorganize its structure, create new synaptic connections, and dissolve old ones in response to new experiences and inputs, provides the final and perhaps the most powerful piece of independent scientific corroboration for the Theta Gateway method. For most of the 20th century, it was the consensus of neuroscience that the adult brain was essentially fixed in its structural organization, that the neural pathways established in childhood and early adulthood were permanent, and that the brain's capacity for structural change was negligible after a certain age. This consensus has been definitively overturned. The contemporary understanding of neuroplasticity confirms that the brain retains significant capacity for structural reorganization throughout life, and that this capacity is expressed most powerfully under conditions of intense, focused, emotionally engaged, repetitive experience. The theta state, with its combination of reduced critical resistance, maximum depth of subconscious receptivity, and the sensory richness of the well-executed micro-scene loop, constitutes precisely the conditions under which neuroplasticity is most powerfully activated. Each nightly session of the Theta protocol is not merely a metaphysical event. It is a neurological event, a session of deliberate, targeted neuroplastic restructuring in which new synaptic pathways corresponding to the desired reality are being systematically built, and old pathways corresponding to the existing unwanted conditions are being progressively starved of activation and dissolved. The timeline of neuroplastic change is relevant to the practitioner who is wondering how long the consistent practice of the Theta protocol must be maintained before the corresponding changes in outer circumstances become visible. The neuroscientific literature on neuroplasticity suggests that measurable structural changes in neural organization can begin to emerge after as few as 8 to 12 days of consistent, focused practice, with deeper and more fundamental changes requiring longer periods of sustained application. This aligns remarkably well with the empirical reports of practitioners of Neville's method, who frequently describe a pattern of initial subtle shifts in mood, in the quality of habitual thought, in the emotional ease of imagining the desired reality, appearing within the first 1 to 2 weeks, followed by more tangible external manifestations appearing in the 2 to 8 week range for most desires, with deeper structural life changes sometimes requiring longer sustained practice. These timelines are not guarantees, and they vary substantially based on the depth and consistency of the practice, the degree of existing conflict between the new blueprint and the deeply embedded old one, and the specific nature of the desired manifestation. But they are the consistent pattern reported across a wide range of practitioners, and they are consistent with what the neuroscience of neuroplasticity would lead us to predict. The convergence of Neville's metaphysical framework and the neuroscience of brainwave frequencies, hypnotic receptivity, childhood development and neuroplasticity is not merely intellectually satisfying, it is operationally transformative. Because when you understand that the Theta gateway is not merely a spiritual concept, but a neurologically real and measurable condition of brain function, you approach the practice with a completely different quality of confidence. You are not trying something that might work. You are applying a known mechanism, a mechanism confirmed by 2 entirely independent systems of knowledge, arrived at through entirely different methods, pointing at the same fundamental truth, with the calm, settled authority of someone who understands exactly what they are doing and exactly why it produces the results it produces. The mystery is not the mechanism is clear. The mystery, the miraculous, breathtaking mystery, is the sheer creative power that the mechanism unleashes when it is correctly and consistently applied by a thinker who has decided, with full understanding and full authority, what they wish to create. The gateway is open. The neuroscience is behind you. The law is in motion. All that remains is the decision to plant, tonight, the seed of the reality you choose to inhabit tomorrow. The final point to be made in this section is a point about the relationship between belief and neurological function, specifically about whether your belief in the Theta gateway method is a prerequisite for its effectiveness. The answer is the same answer that Neville would give, and the same answer that the neurologist would give, and their agreement on this point is itself one of the most powerful single confirmations of the method's validity. The Theta state is a neurological condition. Its receptivity is a function of brain frequency, not of conscious intention or conscious belief. The subconscious mind's response to Theta-level imprinting is a function of its fundamental architecture, not of the practitioner's intellectual opinion about whether it will work. You do not need to believe in gravity for gravity to act upon you. You need only to be subject to it, which as a physical being in a gravitational field, you unconditionally are. In precisely the same way, you do not need to believe in the subconscious's response to Theta imprinting for that response to occur. You need only to use the gateway correctly, to achieve the physical preparation, the Theta threshold, the first-person sensory loop, and the falling asleep within the scene, for the law to respond. Belief, when it exists, eliminates the internal resistance that can sometimes interfere with the completeness of the preparation. It makes the practice easier, but the practice does not require belief the way a prayer requires faith. It requires correct execution the way a mathematical formula requires correct inputs. Provide the correct inputs, the law provides the correct output, every time. Among the many stories that Neville Goddard drew upon in his lectures to illustrate the living reality of the principles he taught, the story of his journey to Barbados holds a unique position in the canon of practical demonstrations. It is not remarkable merely as a striking account of an extraordinary coincidence. It is remarkable as the precise, documented, personally lived evidence of the Theta gateway's creative power, operating exactly as the law predicts, producing a result that no amount of daytime willpower, negotiation, or practical effort had been able to produce through any visible causal mechanism. It is the story of the Trojan horse passing through the gates in real time in the life of the man who was teaching the principle. And it is, in every detail, a perfect illustration of the architecture we have been building throughout this entire teaching. The circumstances of the story are specific and important. Neville was living in New York City in the 1930s during a period of genuine financial hardship. He had no employment and very limited financial resources. He had a deep and urgent desire to return to his homeland of Barbados to visit his family, but there was no visible mechanism by which this was possible. There was no money for the passage, no obvious source from which the money could come, and no practical path that Neville could identify through any conventional means. This is the starting condition, the state of physical reality, fully evidenced by the external circumstances, that the fully alert conscious mind would have surveyed and declared insurmountable. And in these exact circumstances, Neville went to his teacher, the Ethiopian mystic Abdullah, who had been instructing him in the science of mind, and shared his dilemma. Abdullah's response was not a sympathetic acknowledgement of the difficulty. It was a declaration. "You are already in Barbados," he said. Not, "You will be in Barbados." Not, "If you apply the method correctly, you might be in Barbados." You are already in Barbados. The present tense of the fulfilled desire, stated as an irrevocable fact. This is the teacher's instruction, and it is the most precise single articulation of the operating principle of the Theta gateway that could possibly be given. Neville took this instruction with complete seriousness and translated it into the specific operational practice of the Theta gateway. Each night, he lay in his bed in his New York apartment and used the pre-sleep state to perform the complete infiltration protocol, directed toward a single, precise, imaginal reality. He was already in Barbados, sleeping in his mother's home. He did not imagine the journey to Barbados. He did not imagine arriving in Barbados. He imagined being already there, the specific sensory texture of the tropical air on his skin as he lay in the familiar bed, the sound of the ocean audible through the walls, the quality of the night air in the Barbados climate, the particular atmosphere of his mother's house, first-person, sensory, present tense. The micro-scene was not a visualization of travel, it was the inhabitation of the arrived state. He fell asleep each night by his own account, inside this imaginal Barbados. His last conscious experience before sleep was the felt reality of already being where he desired to be, in his mother's home, in the tropical air, with the sound of the ocean as his final sensory impression before consciousness dissolved. The external developments that followed are the most precise possible demonstration of the law in action. Within approximately 1 month of beginning this Theta practice, with no action taken by Neville to arrange or facilitate the journey, no letters written, no contacts approached, no financial arrangements attempted, a letter arrived from his brother. The letter contained a fully paid boat ticket from New York to Barbados, along with $50 in spending money. The brother's motivation for sending this gift was, from the perspective of ordinary causal analysis, essentially inexplicable. There was no special occasion, no prior communication that had indicated Neville's desire to return, no visible reason why this particular brother, at this particular moment, would have sent this particular provision. From the perspective of the conventional worldview, it was a remarkable coincidence. From the perspective of the law of mind, it was not coincidence at all. It was the faithful, mechanical, inevitable externalization of the blueprint that had been correctly installed at the Theta level, night after night, with the full sensory precision and the full first-person inhabitation that the law requires. The subconscious mind, holding the reality of Barbados as its new operative fact, had reorganized the entire field of Neville's circumstances, including the inner life of his brother in another city, in accordance with the new blueprint. The physical body was, as Neville put it with characteristic precision, dragged across the ocean to match where the mind had been sleeping. The phrase "dragged across the ocean to match where the mind had been sleeping" is not metaphor. It is the most literal possible description of the law of correspondence, the ancient metaphysical principle that the outer world is always, without exception, the precise reflection of the inner world. The body was in New York. The circumstances were those of poverty and restriction. But the inner world, the operative reality of the subconscious, imprinted night after night at the theta level with the felt reality of Barbados, had shifted. And once the inner world had fully shifted, once the new blueprint had been installed with sufficient depth, consistency, and sensory completeness to fully override the existing pattern, the outer world had no choice but to follow. There is no mechanism in the law that would allow the outer to remain in permanent contradiction with the inner, once the inner has been genuinely and completely reprogrammed. The outer always follows. The only variables are the depth of the inner change and the time required for the physical mechanisms of externalization to unfold. The significance of the Barbados story for the practitioner of the Theta Gateway is not merely inspirational. It is instructional, specifically in two operational details that are frequently overlooked in casual retellings. The first is the precision of what Neville imagined. He did not imagine the trip, the journey, or the process. He imagined the end state, being already there, sleeping in his mother's home in the tropical air. This is the principle of the post-state, which we have emphasized throughout this teaching. You plant the seed of the arrived reality, not the seed of the journey toward it. The subconscious is not interested in your plans for getting from here to there. It is interested only in the felt reality of being there. Give it that feeling, with the full sensory completeness of the first-person theta imprint, and it will find the route between here and there through whatever mechanisms are available to it, mechanisms that, in most cases, the conscious mind could never have designed or anticipated. The second instructional detail is the absence of any visible effort on Neville's part. He did not write the letter. He did not approach the brother. He did not attempt to arrange the passage by any conventional means. The principle of inspired action, acting when the impulse arises naturally from within the new inner state rather than forcing action from the anxiety of the old state, is embedded in this story. Neville's function was the imprinting. The law's function was the execution, and the execution came through the most natural, graceful, uncontrived path available. A brother's spontaneous generosity, delivering exactly what was needed, at exactly the right moment, without any visible causal chain connecting it to Neville's inner work. This is what the machinery of the cosmos looks like when it moves to fulfill a correctly installed blueprint. Not drama, not spectacle. Simply the quiet, efficient, elegant resolution of every practical obstacle, arriving through the people and circumstances that are already present in your life, reorganized by the deep intelligence of the subconscious in response to the new command it has received. The Barbados story closes with the image that is perhaps the most powerful single metaphor for the Theta Gateway's ultimate promise: Neville's physical body in New York, being relocated to Barbados, being literally moved across a geographical distance to match the reality that his inner life had established. The distance between the current external circumstances and the desired external circumstances, however vast, however seemingly unbridgeable by any visible practical means, is, from the perspective of the law, no distance at all. It is only the temporal gap between the correct inner cause and its inevitable outer effect. The cause is established at the gateway. The effect follows through the channels of the physical world, and the physical world, for all its apparent density and resistance, is, as Neville taught with absolute consistency across his entire career, nothing more than the projected image of the inner world, responsive to the inner world, subordinate to the inner world, and ultimately powerless to remain in contradiction with the inner world once that inner world has been genuinely, deeply, and completely reprogrammed. The ocean between New York and Barbados was, in the end, not an obstacle. It was merely the stage on which the law performed its work. Your circumstances, however difficult, however entrenched, however completely they currently contradict the blueprint you intend to install, they are your ocean, and the Theta Gateway is the instrument by which you will cross it. You have now been given the complete architecture of one of the most powerful creative instruments available to the conscious human being, not as a collection of spiritual suggestions, but as a unified, precise, internally consistent system of law, a system grounded simultaneously in the metaphysical genius of Neville Goddard and in the neurological reality confirmed by the science of brainwave states hypnotic receptivity, and neuroplasticity. The foundation, the mechanics, the preconditions, the errors, the corrections, the master instructions, and the living proof have all been laid before you with full transparency. What remains is the synthesis, the integration of every element of this teaching into a single crystalline understanding that you can carry forward into your practice with the settled authority of the initiated. The synthesis begins with the most fundamental recognition in this entire teaching, stated now not as a theoretical principle, but as the operating fact of your life from this moment forward. Every night, you pass through the most powerful creative window in your daily cycle. Every single night, without exception, the biological machinery of your consciousness produces the Theta state, the open gate, the dissolved guard, the undefended vault of the universal creative substance, as the inevitable prelude to sleep. This has always been true. It was true last night. It will be true tonight. The question that this teaching answers is not, how do I create this window? The window creates itself. The question it answers is, what are you going to bring through it? The architecture of your current reality, every circumstance, every relationship, every financial condition, every aspect of your physical body and your habitual emotional experience, is the precise and faithful external expression of the blueprint that has been installed in your subconscious through years of unconscious theta imprinting. The nightly drift into sleep, carrying the emotional residue of the day's fears, frustrations, grievances, and default anxieties, has been installing with the full creative power of the most fertile window of your daily cycle, the blueprint of the reality you are trying to escape. This is the diagnosis, not of your failure, but of the system that has been running automatically in your absence of awareness. The system is not broken. It is working with extraordinary precision and absolute faithfulness. The only thing that needs to change is the input, and the Theta gateway is the instrument through which that change is made. The infiltration protocol, the physical shutdown, the micro-scene, the sensory loop, and the falling asleep within the loop is not a technique you perform in addition to living your life. It is the primary creative act of each day, the moment in which you exercise your full authority as a thinker to decide what the next 24 hours will be built upon. Everything else in your day, your conscious thoughts, your actions, your conversations, your choices, is secondary to the blueprint installed in the subconscious at the theta level. This does not mean the waking hours are irrelevant. It means they are the garden through which the seed must grow. And the gardener who has correctly planted in the theta state tends the garden in the waking hours, not with anxious effort, but with the quiet, settled confidence of one who knows that the harvest is already determined, already in motion, already irreversible. The last 5 minutes of your day are not an afterthought. They are the command that the entire night, and through the night, the entire subsequent day, will execute. This is not hyperbole. This is the literal, operational, neurologically confirmed, metaphysically grounded truth of your biology and your psychology. The feeling you carry into sleep is the seed the universe will grow for you while you rest. The blueprint you install at the gateway is the order that the most powerful creative force in existence, the universal subconscious mind, will spend the next 24 hours fulfilling. There is no more efficient use of the 5 minutes before sleep. There is no more powerful creative act in the human experience. And there is, within the architecture of your daily life, no moment of greater leverage. 5 minutes of correct, deep, sensory, first-person theta imprinting, 5 minutes of truly falling asleep inside the wished fulfilled, has more creative power than hours of daytime affirmation, willpower, or forced visualization. Not because the law favors the nighttime. Because the nighttime is when the soil is deepest, the resistance is lowest, and the seed goes in without a fight. Stop fighting the guards in the harsh, unforgiving light of day. This instruction is not an invitation to passivity. It is a redirection from the most exhausting, the most resistant, the most inefficient point of creative intervention to the most powerful, the most accessible, and the most reliably effective one. The guard is not your enemy. The analytical mind, the critical faculty, the evidentiary standard of the waking conscious mind, these are not obstacles to be overcome or enemies to be defeated. They are the faithful servants of the existing blueprint, doing exactly the job they were designed to do. The mistake was not in having a guard. The mistake was in continuing to assault the gate he was guarding at noon, in full sunlight, when every advantage belonged to the defense. The Theta gateway teaches you to stop fighting and to start timing, to stop assaulting and to start infiltrating, to stop spending your creative energy on resistance and to start spending it on precision. Become the master of the night. This is your true domain, not the domain of sleep, but the domain of the threshold, that exquisite and extraordinary 5-minute window, when the brain descends from the noise of beta through the softening of alpha and into the deep creative stillness of theta. This window is yours. It has always been yours. Every human being on the face of the earth passes through this window every night, and the vast majority of them pass through it empty-handed, or worse, carrying the wrong seeds. To become the master of the night is to become the deliberate, conscious, precisely skilled user of the single most powerful natural creative mechanism available to the human being. It is not a special power granted to the few. It is a biological fact available to every conscious being who is willing to understand it, prepare for it, and use it with intention. The mastery is not supernatural. It is the mastery of attention, the trained, patient, disciplined, loving redirection of the mind's natural pre-sleep drift toward the chosen blueprint, maintained with quiet authority until sleep carries it into the deepest creative medium in existence. The gateway opens every single evening. This is not a metaphor for opportunity. It is the literal, neurological, biological reality of your nightly sleep cycle. The Theta threshold appears as reliably as sunset, in the minutes before sleep claims your consciousness. It appeared last night. It will appear tonight. It will appear every night for the rest of your life, opening the deepest creative access point in your psyche, waiting with the absolute, impartial, unconditional readiness of a law for whatever input you choose to provide. The universe is not withholding its creative power from you until you are worthy or deserving or spiritually advanced. The law is not evaluating your qualifications. The gateway is simply open, and it is waiting for your code. Not your hope, not your prayer, not your wish. Your code, the precise sensory first-person feeling image of the reality you have decided to inhabit, delivered to the creative medium at the moment of maximum receptivity, with the settled authority of a thinker who understands the law and applies it with confidence. Slip through the door and plant the seed of greatness, not the seed of a single dramatic event, but the seed of a new identity. The seed of the person who already has, already is, already lives within the reality you desire. Because the truth that Neville understood more deeply than perhaps any teacher of his era is this: manifestation is never truly about the object. It is always about the assumption. The money manifests because the assumption of financial wholeness is planted in the subconscious. The relationship manifests because the assumption of being deeply and completely loved is planted in the subconscious. The success manifests because the assumption of competence, of value, of deserving recognition is planted in the subconscious. The objects and the circumstances are the outer expressions of the inner assumptions. Plant the assumption at the theta level. Plant the feeling of being the person for whom these conditions are simply the natural, ordinary expected texture of daily life, and the objects and circumstances will follow with the same inevitable faithfulness with which the body follows the brain. Wake up in a new reality, not suddenly, not through some dramatic rupture in the fabric of your existing circumstances, but progressively, continuously, and with ever-increasing clarity and completeness, as the new blueprint installed at the theta level propagates outward through the entire system of your life. The changes will not always announce themselves dramatically. They will often arrive quietly, a slight shift in how others respond to you, a thought that arises unbidden, pointing you toward an opportunity you would previously have missed, a relationship that begins to change its quality without any external event precipitating the change, a financial door that opens through a chain of events that no amount of conscious planning could have engineered. These are not coincidences. They are not luck. They are the visible, physical, externalized evidence of the invisible, metaphysical, internally completed work that you performed at the gateway the night before. They are the soldiers emerging from the Trojan horse. They are the planted seed breaking the surface of the soil. They are the law doing what the law always does, building, with absolute faithfulness and absolute precision, the exact external reality that corresponds to the blueprint held in the subconscious. Recognize them for what they are. Welcome them as the first fruits of a harvest that began the moment you slipped the first correct imprint through the open gate. The transformation you are seeking is not located in your circumstances. It is not waiting for you in a future version of your external world that you must somehow reach by sufficient effort, sufficient persistence, or sufficient worthiness. It is located in the architecture of your subconscious, in the blueprint that is currently, in this moment, generating the external world you are experiencing. Change the blueprint, and the external world changes. Not because the external world is flexible or fluid, or easily shaped by mental states in some mystical, unverifiable way, but because the external world has always been, is now, and will always be nothing more than the precise projection of the internal blueprint, as reliably, as mechanically, as lawfully as a film projector throws the image that is on the reel onto the screen. The screen does not resist the image. It does not evaluate it or judge it, or decide whether it is worthy of being projected. It projects exactly what the reel contains. Your external life is the screen. Your subconscious blueprint is the reel. The Theta gateway is where you change the film, tonight, every night, with full authority, with perfect precision, with the calm, settled, absolute certainty of someone who has understood the law. The power you have been seeking, the power to change your circumstances, to realize your desires, to live the life that corresponds to the deepest truth of who you know yourself to be, has never been withheld from you. It has been present every night, waiting at the threshold of sleep, disguised as nothing more remarkable than the drowsy, floating sensation you pass through on your way to unconsciousness. That sensation is the gateway. That drowsiness is the guard asleep at his post. That formless, floating, borderless quality of pre-sleep awareness is the open door to the most creative, most responsive, most powerful medium in the universe. You now know what it is. You now know how to use it. And that knowledge, applied with the discipline, the precision, and the quiet authority that this teaching has equipped you to exercise, is the beginning, not of a hope, not of a practice you might try, but of a new life. The seed is ready. The soil is open. The night is here. Now the teaching becomes the practice, and the practice becomes the transformation. Everything that has been presented to you in this video, the architecture of the law, the mechanics of the Theta gateway, the precision of the infiltration protocol, the discipline of the gentle return, the neuroscience, the living proof, all of it resolves into a single practical challenge that I am issuing to you now, in the same spirit in which Neville issued challenges to his students. Not as a suggestion to be considered and perhaps eventually acted upon, as a 7-night commitment to the deliberate use of the most powerful creative window in your daily cycle. This is the 7-night loop, and it is the instrument by which the principles of this teaching will cease to be knowledge and become experience, by which the theory of the law will become the lived, tested, personally confirmed reality of the law in your own life. The structure of the 7-night loop is the complete infiltration protocol, applied with full precision for 7 consecutive nights without a single night missed, not 6 nights, with the 7th night abandoned because you were tired or distracted or tempted by the belief that you've already done enough to see results. 7 consecutive nights of complete, disciplined, deliberate application. The reason for the 7-night commitment is not arbitrary. It corresponds precisely to the neurological research on the timeline of early neuroplastic change, the window within which the first measurable structural shifts in neural organization begin to emerge in response to consistent, focused, repetitive practice. 7 nights of correct theta imprinting will not complete the full reprogramming of a deeply embedded belief, but they will demonstrate, in your own neurological system and in your own lived experience, that the mechanism is real, that the shifts are measurable, and that the practice is worth the long-term commitment it deserves. 7 nights is the proof of concept. Beyond those 7 nights lies the full transformation. Begin tonight by selecting the single most important desire in your current life, the one desire whose fulfillment would have the most significant positive impact on the full landscape of your experience. Not the easiest desire, not the most convenient one, but the one that matters most. Take the time before you lie down to construct your micro-scene for this desire. That 3-second sensory fragment of the wish already fulfilled, designed with the first-person perspective and the specific sensory details that will give it the tones of reality at the theta level. The handshake of the concluded deal, the weight of the ring, the texture of the key in your hand as you open the door of the new home, the specific voice speaking the specific words of congratulation. Choose one scene, make it precise, commit to it, and then perform the complete protocol, the immobilization, the threshold sensing, the loop, the falling asleep within the loop, with the full authority of someone who understands not just what they are doing but exactly why it works, and exactly what law they are invoking with each cycle of the loop. Do not miss a single night. This instruction is not parenthetical. The consistency of the practice is not merely helpful, it is structurally necessary for the neuroplastic deepening that builds over successive nights, from the first faint groove in the subconscious to the carved, permanent channel through which the new blueprint flows with authority and depth. Each night's session deepens the work of the previous night's session. Each morning that you wake up and feel, even fleetingly, even faintly, that the desired reality is somehow more natural, more settled, more obviously belonging to you than it did the morning before, is the evidence that the groove is deepening. These subtle morning shifts are the early signals of the transformation in progress. Do not dismiss them. Do not demand that they be more dramatic than they are. The seed's first movement underground is not visible. The seed's first emergence above the surface is not a fully grown tree. Recognize the stages of the growth for what they are, and maintain the practice through each of them without wavering. In 7 nights, if you execute this protocol with full precision and full commitment, you will have something that no quantity of reading or intellectual understanding can provide. You will have the personal, lived, experiential knowledge that the Theta Gateway is real. Not as a theory, not as a plausible-sounding framework, as a tested, confirmed, personally verified fact of your own experience. You will have felt the tones of reality. You will have noticed the morning shifts. You will, in all likelihood, have begun to see the first external evidence of the law in motion. The small, quiet, unremarkable-looking, but unmistakably significant shifts in your circumstances that signal the invisible reorganization of the subconscious, now expressing itself in the physical world. And with that personal confirmation in your possession, you will no longer be a student of this teaching. You will be a practitioner of this law, with all the authority, all the confidence, and all the creative power that genuine understanding of a genuine law provides. There is one final instruction, and it is delivered not as a technique or a protocol, but as the foundational orientation from which every technique and every protocol derives its ultimate power. You are not a petitioner. You are not a supplicant, begging the universe for favors it may or may not choose to grant. You are a thinker, the precise, specific term Neville used to describe the human being who has understood their own creative authority and is exercising it with full awareness. The thinker is not humble in the way that the petitioner is humble. The thinker is humble before the law, acknowledging that the law is greater than any individual will, that it operates on principles that must be understood and respected rather than commanded and controlled. But the thinker is not humble before the desired reality. The thinker speaks to the law as an equal speaks to a principle, not with arrogance, but with the quiet, settled, confident authority of someone who knows the rule, has done the calculation, and expects the correct answer. Approach the Theta Gateway tonight in this spirit, not hoping, not wishing, not asking, decreeing, installing the blueprint with the full, calm, settled authority of the thinker, who knows that the law receives the imprint and builds the corresponding reality, always without exception with mathematical certainty. The gateway is open, the vault is waiting. You are the keeper of the code. Subscribe to Sacred Logic and join the community of those who are learning to master the mechanics of the mind, One law at a time, one night at a time, one blueprint at a time. The transformation is not coming, it has already begun.